If Jung's theories about the shadow and Otto Rank's related theories about the double are even partially correct, then when we watch films or read stories that foreground an encounter with a shadow figure, you can bet that those stories are fundamentally explorations of the human tendency to repress, deny, and project. More specifically, we might say that the shadow erupts at the moment where our repressions fail, our denial breaks, and our projections come home to roost. Moreover, because the shadow represents the flawed, narcissistic, and cruel part of the self that we have hidden beneath the mask of civility, confrontations with the shadow are profoundly disturbing and even traumatic, because they are also always confrontations with aspects of the self that we would like to deny. There are few experiences more distressing than the realization that we have got ourselves wrong, that our motives are not what we claimed, that we are not the people we thought of ourselves as being. The shadow, therefore, emblematizes the repressive functions of the unconscious mind. Consequently, the concept of the shadow is also associated with a particular and paradoxical kind of traumatic knowledge that we wish to conceal, not just from others, but from ourselves. In other words, knowledge that we do not know. The realm of dirty secrets and unbearable truths is also the realm of the shadow. Pop culture and Jungian thought seem perfectly aligned in their understanding of the shadow archetype. For one of the most important of Batman's pulp precursors is even called the Shadow. The character was a star of both magazines and the radio in the 1930s, and in one of those curious twists of corporate fate, he ended up passing into the ownership of DC Comics in the 1970s, where he sometimes ended up doing guest appearances alongside his most successful fictional descendant. Bill Finger, Batman's first writer, said in interviews that he was particularly inspired by the radio version of the Shadow. Like Bruce Wayne, the Shadow's alter ego, Lamont Cranston, played the part of a wealthy socialite by day, but adopted the guise of a mysterious crime fighter at night. Each episode of his radio adventures was introduced with the haunting question, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The answer, of course, was, the Shadow knows. Thus, his capacity for menace was established as a predicate of the forbidden knowledge that he possessed. There's no hiding from the Shadow, the implication goes, because he already knows your worst secrets. He knows who you really are. Now, Batman, too, is a character who knows things that he shouldn't know, who uncovers the secrets that people would rather keep. Indeed, this aspect of his persona is exaggerated almost to the point of parody in this funny moment from Frank Miller and Jim Lee's All-Star Batman and Robin. Contemptuous of what he regards as the intellectual limitations of his fellow hero, the Green Lantern, Batman makes a point of calling the Lantern by his civilian name, Hal Jordan.
"What do you want, Jordan?"
The Lantern is suitably shocked and asks, "How the heck do you know my name?" Batman responds, without irony,
"I know everything."
But of course, the whole point of the shadow concept within psychoanalytic thought is that no one knows everything, not even, or perhaps especially, about themselves. As I've already said, the shadow archetype symbolizes the limits of self-knowledge, as well as emblematizing our tendency to project everything we would prefer not to know about ourselves onto others. Indeed, Batman's hostility to the Lantern looks remarkably like an active negative projection, as the captions on the next page make clear.
Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. That ring of his is the most powerful known weapon in the galaxy. If he thinks something up, it just plain happens. That makes him the Milky Way's top cop. His alien mentor was looking for a man of superhuman will, and a man without fear. The mentor's job description for Hal didn't seem to factor in smarts. He's dumb as a post. I've seen more intelligent hockey pucks. The clown makes oversized egg beaters and mousetraps and vacuum cleaners when he could set the whole world straight with that ring. What a damn idiot. The things I do with power like that.
Now, of course, at this moment, you should probably be glad that Batman doesn't actually have power like that. But the larger point is that on the one hand, he disdains the Lantern for not being smart enough to fight crime more effectively. But on the other hand, implicit in his commentary is the barely acknowledged recognition of his own limitations. The things I do, the things I would do if only. Thus, like all shadow figures, Batman is radically self-undermining. He cannot afford to know his own limitations and weaknesses. He cannot afford to see them. He cannot afford to know his own shadow nature. He cannot afford to remember that deep inside he is still a little boy who lost his parents, and he cannot afford to recognize that his doomed attempt to undo that original trauma has actually made him kin to the very forces of madness, darkness, and chaos that he has devoted his life to battling. But as Freud said, that which is repressed always returns, and that is why in story after story we are dragged back to the image of the murdered parents in Crime Alley. And that is why, in story after story, the shadow figures around this archetypal shadow figure double and multiply, each of them in their own way asking us to recognize the existence of an uncanny, haunting resemblance between the character and his enemies.